If you're looking for the easiest AI side hustles, then I've got some good news for you, which is you don't need to build a business from scratch. You don't need to be an expert. AI can help you create products that people are willing to pay for, even if you only got a few hours a week, to work on them. And in this video, I'm going to show you 5 ways that you can actually do this. Now, one of them is really, really good, because you can skip creating anything altogether. Which if you're working 9 to 5, might actually be the option that you like the most. And I'm going to save that one there for my last reveal. So let's start with number one then, creating an ebook. Now, when I say creating an ebook, I'm not talking about sitting down for 3 months and, writing 200 page a masterpiece. Now, please don't do that. You've got a job, you've got a life. So I wouldn't recommend that, at all. Yeah, so the idea is to create something simple that solves one specific problem. So, for example, instead of creating an ebook called everything you need to know about fitness, you could create how busy professionals could lose their first £10 with 30-minute workouts. See the difference? One is massive. The other solves a very specific problem for a very specific person. And this is where AI can actually become, incredibly useful. Now you can use things like Chat GPT, Gemini, and it can help you brainstorm your idea, structure into chapters, develop the content, create examples, improve the writing, and turn your knowledge into something that actually looks like the finished product. Some more good news then, you don't need to be like a professional writer. You just need to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And that's important because AI can help you create the product. But actually make sure that the product is actually useful. And that's going to be the difference between something that people buy versus something that gets downloaded and it never gets opened, again. And once you've got your ebook, you can sell it over and over again. You don't need anything like no packaging, which is obviously really, really good. Which brings me to number two, which is creating, your own GPT, which is basically your own personalized chat GPT. Now, this is where things get really interesting. So instead of selling information, you can create something that actually does a job for someone. So you've got to think about something that's like repetitive that people do. Things like writing social media posts, creating meal plans, coming up with business ideas, writing sales copies, creating workout routines, planning content, generating ideas. So you could create a GPT designed around one specific task and make it useful for a particular audience. For example, you could target busy personal trainers. So instead of creating an ebook explaining how to write social media content, you could create a GPT that helps personal trainers generate their own social media content. Now, this is a completely different type of product. Now, you're not just giving someone information, you're giving them a tool that helps them get something done. And again, you don't necessarily need to be anything like a programmer, again, which is really, really good. So the real skill is understanding what problem you're trying to solve and who you're solving it for. The money isn't really in the AI. The money is, using AI to solve problems people already have. Now let's move on to number three. So creating templates, workbooks, and digital resources. Now this one I think is massively underrated because you don't always need to create a huge product. Sometimes people just want something that makes their life easier. So what can we do? We could create checklists. We can create templates, planners, worksheets, swipe files, prompt packs, content calendars, workbooks, calendars, and also step-by-step guides. For example, imagine you're targeting small business owners. You could create a 30-day social media content planner, or perhaps you're targeting people trying to start a side hustle. So you could create side hustle planning workbook, or maybe you're targeting job seekers. So you could create a job application interview preparation workbook, something like that. So the possibilities are pretty much endless. And the great thing about these products is you can set them up relatively quickly. You don't need 100 pages of something. It doesn't need to be too fancy, like a membership site. You need something that just helps someone get from where they are now to where they want to be. And of course, because you're using AI to help you with the curation process, you can dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes to turn an idea into the finished product. But there's another type of product you can create that's potentially even more valuable. And that brings me to number four, which is creating like an online course or like a training product. Now, before you panic and hear the words, online course, and you think, well, I'm not telling you to create, like a 47 module university degree. Again, you've got a 9 to 5. Just keep it simple. Think about one result you can help someone achieve. Then turn it into, a short training product. For example, it could be something like how to start your first YouTube channel, how to create your first digital product, how to create a simple email list, or even something based on a skill you already have in your own job. So AI can take that knowledge and turn it into like a structured learning experience, and it can help you, organize lessons, create exercises, develop examples, come up with questions, and simplify complicated concepts, and help you turn your knowledge into something that someone else can follow, step by step. And here's the important part: you don't need to know everything. You just need to know enough to help someone who is, maybe 1 or 2 steps behind you. You don't need to be a world-leading expert. It just needs to be something useful. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions beginners have about creating digital products. They think, but I'm not an expert. You don't need to be. And they think, it's going to take me months, but it doesn't have to. The whole point here is using AI to, reduce the amount of time between having an idea and actually getting something created. But there is still one option left, and honestly, if you are on very limited time, this might be the one that's most interesting of all. So number 5, don't create a product, promote someone else's. Now, this is affiliate marketing. So instead of spending your evenings creating a product, building a course, or developing a digital product, you can find an existing product that already solves a problem. Then you can, of course, promote it. So when someone buys through your affiliate link, you're going to get a commission, and this completely changes the game, because now you don't have to worry about creating the product. You don't have to worry about updating the product, and you don't have to worry about anything like customer delivery. And you don't have to spend weeks building something before if anyone is actually going to want the thing. So your job now will be trying to find things like the right audience, creating useful content, and putting the right offer right in front of them. And this is particularly interesting if you're already working a 9 to 5, because because your biggest limitation probably isn't ideas, it's probably time. You might only have an hour in the evening, maybe a couple at the weekend. So why make the business harder than it needs to be? So you can use AI to help you create your own products, or you can use AI to help you create the content that gets people interested in products that already exist. And that brings us to the bigger picture. You don't need to look at these 5 options and think, I have to choose the perfect one immediately. You could just start with an ebook. You could create a useful GPT. You could build templates or workbooks. You could turn your knowledge into a short course, or you simply could promote someone else's product, as an affiliate. Now, the important thing is to stop thinking that starting an online business automatically means you've got to spend hundreds or thousands of pounds and working on it every single night, into midnight. So it doesn't. You can start small. You can use AI to reduce the workload, and you can build around the time you actually have available. So if you're already working 9 to 5, this is the approach that I'd recommend. Now, don't try to build everything. Pick one problem, one audience, and one simple product or offer. Then use AI to help you, to create it faster. And if creating your own product still sounds like too much work, that's exactly why affiliate marketing is worth considering. So in fact, I've actually put together my own free ebook called The Affiliate Success Roadmap 0 to 10K. Now, this is going to walk you through the process of getting started in affiliate marketing, and you can obviously grab it for completely free, and you'll find the link below this video. Okay, so there you have it. 5 ways you can turn AI into a potential digital product side hustle without needing to be an expert, without needing like a huge budget, or without needing to spend every spare hour you have building a business. So the biggest mistake would be spending the next 6 months researching which idea is best. Pick one, start small. Use AI to make the process easier, and most importantly, actually get started. Because the easiest side hustle isn't necessarily the one that sounds the most exciting. It's the one that you're actually able to build consistently around your 9 to